They called it the Leviathan, but that was just the name we used in whispers. Officially, it was HSS Dreadnought Valiance, a slab of steel and spite big enough to blot out the sun when it passed overhead. I'd been posted on her for 3 years, long before Command decided to use her for first contact. The brass swore this was about peace. Everyone on board knew it wasn't. The Valiance wasn't built to talk. She was built to make anyone we met think twice about breathing the same air as us. No sleek lines, no elegant alien curves. She was all jagged armor, railgun arrays, and a spinal cannon big enough to gut a moon. I was standing in the observation deck when the alien ship appeared. Sleek, silver, almost fragile-looking, like it was grown instead of built. I could feel the tension in my jaw as I stared at it, the way a wolf watches a deer walk into its den. Captain Reeves, cold-eyed, jaw like a chiseled block of stone, stood behind the glass with his hands clasped. He didn't bother with the comms. The alien ship hailed first, a voice smooth and almost melodic. I couldn't understand the words, but the translation AI spat out something diplomatic about mutual understanding and exchange of culture. The captain didn't answer. He just ordered power to the spinal cannon. Not to fire, yet, but to charge. It was his version of saying, hello. That's when I realized something ugly. We weren't here for a conversation. We were here to make sure the galaxy understood what humanity's first words really were. Don't test us. The alien ship hesitated. Lights flickered along its hull, maybe scanning us, maybe panicking. I saw my reflection in the glass. Eyes narrowed, breath steady, and I knew I was seeing exactly what they were seeing on their end, a monster in the dark, ready to crush their ship into stardust if they so much as twitched wrong. The truth is, I didn't know if the captain would fire. But I did know this. If those aliens didn't back off, humanity's first handshake would be through a burning wreck. The comm crackled again. This time the voice was less smooth. It had an edge. They were asking, no, warning us to power down our weapons. The captain just smiled. And that smile? That was when I knew negotiations had already ended. The hum of the spinal cannon vibrated through the deck plates, a low, predatory growl that you could feel in your teeth. No one on the bridge spoke, not even the junior officers who usually whispered behind their consoles. Everyone had the same instinct, stillness. Predators stay still before the strike. The alien vessel hung in space like it was carved from silver bone, its surface rippling with faint blue veins of light. It was beautiful in the way certain poisonous animals are, enough to make you want to touch it, enough to make you pay for the mistake. I knew my job. Tactical systems oversight, eyes on the targeting solutions, shield readouts, and power distribution. But my attention kept drifting to Captain Reeves. The man didn't move. He just stared at the alien ship as if willing it to do something stupid. "Translation feed is solid," said Ensign Braddock from comms, her voice clipped, brittle. "They've repeated the request to disengage weapons, and they've added that our posture is aggressive and non-cooperative." Reeves didn't blink. "Posture's the point." The alien ship adjusted its position slightly, not an approach, not a retreat, just a slow roll that exposed what I assumed was its ventral hull. Strange protrusions slid from the surface, smooth and jointless, like they were extruding the way coral grows. They didn't match any weapon signatures we had in the database. "Sir," I said, my voice lower than usual, "we've got unknown appendages deploying. Energy readings are minimal, but increasing." He gave me one slow nod. "Hold charge. Helm. Adjust orientation to keep spinal cannon locked." I typed in the corrections and felt the massive ship shift under me, inertia dampeners fighting to keep my body from leaning sideways. The Valiants moved like an avalanche, slow at first, then unstoppable. The alien ship didn't flinch. That bothered me more than if they'd armed every weapon they had. Either they didn't think we'd fire, or they thought they could survive it. The second comm burst came without preamble. This time the alien voice was sharper, faster, the translation AI spitting out words like it was choking. "Hostile unit. This behavior will trigger defensive action. Cease weapon charging immediately or—" The rest garbled under interference. "Or what?" Reeves muttered, more to himself than anyone. "Or you'll show me the claws you think you have?" I've served under commanders who believed in peace, and I've served under commanders who believed in war. Reeves, he believed in deterrence. He thought fear was the purest form of diplomacy. The alien appendages finished extending, and with a slow, unfurling motion, the ends split open into what looked like segmented petals. From the center of each, a pulse of soft light began to build, gathering into orbs that swelled and darkened. Weapons. Definitely weapons. "Energy spike," I said flatly, locking my console on the growing orbs. "Thermal output suggests plasma or particle accelerators. Possibly about to test our armor," Reeves cut in. "Target acquisition, 2 points, center mass and primary emitter cluster." The tactical AI confirmed lock-on, the system's voice calm, as if we were practicing on a simulation. My stomach twisted, not from fear, but from the clarity that we were seconds away from making humanity's first impression on an alien species, a smoking crater in the void. The comms lit up again, faster this time. Multiple voices, some overlapping, like the alien ship was suddenly full of shouting. Translation was a mess. I caught fragments. "Stand down. Mutual destruction. Unauthorized escalation. Cease." And then it happened. One of the alien orbs flared white-hot, and a beam of concentrated energy lashed across the space between us. It hit our forward shielding, splashing into a shimmering distortion like sunlight on water. The deck shuddered under my boots. "Shields holding at 91%, I reported. My voice was steady, but I could feel my pulse in my fingertips. Reeves finally moved, just one step forward. "Return fire." The spinal cannon discharged with a noise you didn't just hear. You felt it, deep in your chest, like your bones were being rung like a bell. A spear of incandescent fury ripped from our prow and crossed the void in an instant, slamming into the alien ship's ventral hull. The effect was immediate. The silver plating blistered, split, and vented atmosphere in great bursts of crystallizing vapor. One of the petal-like weapons tore free and drifted off, spinning slowly, its inner light flickering out. The alien vessel twisted hard, faster than something that size had any right to move. Its remaining weapons fired in a volley, beams, pulses, and something that looked like molten metal projectiles, all hammering into our shields. Alarms screamed through the bridge. "Shields at 72%! Port armor heating past tolerance. Secondary power grid taking a hit. Rerouting." Through it all, Reeves was calm, eyes locked on the target. 2 more spinal shots, center line, tactical, cut their engines. I fed the coordinates into the system, and the AI adjusted our aim by fractions of a degree. The next blast gutted a section near their stern, severing one of their propulsion structures in a spray of molten debris. The alien ship staggered, if you can call it that, listing in the void, trying to pivot, but bleeding momentum. And then something unexpected happened. The alien comm channel went dead. Not just quiet. Dead. No signal, no transmissions. Reeves narrowed his eyes. "They're masking or—" Before he could finish, the sensors lit up with a new signature, massive, fast, and closing. Another ship, bigger than the first, emerging from a distortion in space less than 1,000 clicks off our starboard bow. This one wasn't sleek. It wasn't elegant. It was ugly in the way only something made for killing can be. "Contact 2, classification unknown," I said. My gut was already telling me what it meant. "Sir, I think we just shot the wrong guy's scout." Reeves didn't look away from the viewport. "No such thing as the wrong target if it sends the right message." The new ship's weapon arrays lit up like a festival. I realized then that the fight with the first alien ship wasn't the battle. It was just the handshake. The second ship dwarfed the first. Even without the magnification overlays, I could see it was easily twice our length and broader through the midsection. It moved with the confidence of something that didn't need to rush, a predator that knew the kill was inevitable. Its hull was darker than the void, swallowing light instead of reflecting it. Only the weapon hardpoints glowed, crimson rings and jagged strips of blue-white energy that pulsed in a steady rhythm. Every instinct I had screamed, "Don't let it get within range." The first alien ship, our earlier opponent, was drifting wounded now, still trying to pivot away, sparks and debris spilling into the black. No transmissions came from it. The newcomer didn't acknowledge it at all. That told me something ugly. Either it was already written off, or the new arrival was in charge and didn't care about losses. "Range to target?" Reeves' voice was low, controlled. 800 clicks and closing," I answered, my fingers already working the targeting interface. "They'll be in primary battery range in 30 seconds. Bring Spinal online again. All secondary batteries hot." He glanced toward the weapons officer. "And wake up the missile bays." The words were routine, but the tone wasn't. Reeves wasn't talking like he did during a show of force. This was the way he spoke during the real engagements, the ones we never put in official logs. The alien ship's forward section began to split open along a seam I hadn't noticed before, like a mouth unhinging. Inside, a massive assembly unfolded, gleaming with mechanical complexity and coiled energy. Whatever it wasn't just a gun. "They're charging something," I said, reading the surging power signature. "Output's off the charts. I'm getting spikes across the EM spectrum. Sir, I think it's—" "Superweapon," Reeves finished for me. "Helm, roll 30 degrees starboard, pitch down 6. Tactical, I want a concentrated salvo at that assembly. Use the heavies." The ship responded with a groaning shift, our inertial dampeners straining. The tactical officer's hands moved in precise motions, authorizing the railguns and plasma lances to fire in synchronized bursts. The Valiants spat steel and plasma like a furious god. Slugs the size of trucks screamed through space, followed by searing bolts of green-blue energy that left trails in the dark. The alien ship's mouth weapon flared once, then shuddered under the impacts. Armor plates ruptured, exposing glowing conduits and spilling chunks of whatever passed for internal machinery. But it didn't stop. A beam, not light, not plasma, but something that seemed to bend the void around it, erupted from the weapon's maw. It sliced across the distance faster than I could register, slamming into our forward quarter. The ship lurched violently. My console flickered. Every light on the bridge strobed red. "Forward armor breach," someone shouted. "Section 12 is venting." "Shields down to 52%, another voice called. I gritted my teeth, steadying my hands over the controls. The impact had been like taking a sledgehammer to the skull, the soundless kind that rattled your insides and made you forget how to breathe for a second. Reeves didn't flinch. "Return fire. Maximum yield. Hit them until they stop moving." The spinal cannon cycled again, its vibration building to a deep, primal thrum. I could feel it in my ribs, in my jaw, like the whole ship was winding up for a killing blow. "Firing solution locked," I confirmed. "Target, main weapon housing." "Do it." The Valiants roared. The shot carved a molten scar straight through the alien superweapon, tearing its housing apart and sending fragments tumbling into the void. But instead of panicking, the alien ship surged forward. Its hull began to reconfigure, entire sections folding and sliding to form jagged protrusions like the spines of some deep-sea nightmare. Their boarding configurations, I realized aloud. The tactical officer swore under his breath. Multiple spikes. I'm reading dozens of small craft detaching from the underside. They're coming fast. Boarders. Reeves' lip curled into something between a sneer and a smile. Let them try. The missile bays came alive. From the Valiant's flanks, a swarm of hunter-killer warheads streaked into the black, each one finding its target with surgical precision. One by one, the alien boarding craft exploded into silent blossoms of fire and debris. A few made it through. They slammed into our hull with bone-rattling force, magnetic clamps anchoring them in place. The internal alarms shifted tone. Hull breach warnings, security alerts, compartment lockdowns. Security teams, repel boarders, Reeves said into the shipwide. Lethal force authorized. I checked my sidearm out of reflex. If they breached the bridge, we'd all be fighting up close. The alien capital ship kept pounding our shields, even with its main weapon disabled. Secondary batteries lit us up with relentless precision, and our counterfire tore more and more holes in its armor. It wasn't a clean fight anymore. This was a slugging match. Two beasts locked jaw to jaw, tearing chunks out of each other to see who dropped first. Shields at 38%, I reported, sweat running down my back under the uniform. Hull integrity compromised in 4 sectors. We can't hold this pace forever. Reeves leaned forward, his voice low enough that only I could hear it. We don't need forever. Just long enough to convince them they made the worst mistake of their lives. The ship shuddered again. Somewhere deep in the Valiants, the sound of tearing metal echoed faintly through the superstructure. Then, without warning, the alien ship broke off its attack. Its massive frame rotated away from us, venting streams of glowing particles from dozens of ruptures. It wasn't retreating in panic. It was withdrawing in discipline, covering its departure with a final volley that rattled our shields down to 22%. Do we pursue? The helm officer asked. Reeves shook his head. Number, let them run. They'll bring back the story of what they found here. I sat back in my chair, exhaling slowly. My hands were trembling now, not from fear, but from the release of it, the aftershock of knowing we'd stared something enormous in the face and hadn't blinked. Across the viewport, the wounded first ship was gone, either destroyed in the crossfire or already pulled out of the fight by whatever passes for alien medics. The void was littered with debris, the twisted corpses of boarding craft, and the fading embers of missiles that had never found their mark. The Valiance was bleeding, but still alive. Reeves finally turned to the bridge crew, his voice steady. Damage control to all sections. Log the engagement as hostile contact, unprovoked aggression, and make sure the record shows. He paused, just long enough for the silence to become its own punctuation. We ended negotiations. I glanced back at my console, watching the alien ships vanish into the black. I knew this wasn't the end. It was just the start of a war we'd already won in the first 5 minutes. The alarms for boarders are different from any other sound a ship can make. Hull breach alarms are urgent. Evacuation signals are commanding. But the boarder alert is personal. It's sharp, repetitive, almost mocking. It tells you someone who isn't supposed to be here is walking your halls, breathing your air, and they've come to kill you. The bridge stayed locked down, blast doors sealed, security bulkheads reinforced. But that didn't mean we were safe. If the aliens got a plasma cutter into one of the primary systems conduits, they wouldn't need to shoot us to end the fight. Reeves didn't need to tell me twice. I pulled my sidearm, an M79 recoil pistol, standard Navy issue, but modified with an extended mag and an underbarrel shock emitter, and clipped a spare mag to my belt. "Vance," Reeves said, his eyes still locked on the tactical readouts. "You're on deck with security. They breached too deep. I want eyes on it. Clear them out." "Yes, sir." I slung the pistol low, chambered around, and keyed open the secondary bridge exit. The corridor outside was a study in emergency lighting. Red pulses, shadows stretching and collapsing as the strobes hit. The air had that faint ozone tang you get when the energy conduits are running hot. My boots thudded against the deck as I moved, the vibration telling me the Valiance was still adjusting her orientation somewhere in the void. The first impact I heard wasn't gunfire. It was a security team slamming into a bulkhead, bodies skidding across the deck plating. An instant later, the thing that had thrown them followed. The alien was about 2 meters tall, hunched slightly forward, its body encased in segmented plating that looked half-grown, half-forged. Its limbs were too long, the joints bending at angles that made my skin crawl. Instead of eyes, it had a smooth plate of black chitin where a face should have been. It didn't hesitate, just lunged. I fired twice center mass. The rounds punched into its plating with sharp, metallic cracks, and it staggered but didn't fall. It moved like a predator in a killing frenzy, claws tearing sparks from the deck. The third shot was at its head. The plating there cracked, spraying something dark and viscous across the wall. The alien dropped, its claws scraping once against the metal before it went still. I grabbed one of the security officers and hauled him upright. "Where's the breach?" "Section 9 maintenance bay," he panted. 3 pods clamped in. We think a dozen, maybe more inside. I keyed my comm. "Bridge, Vance. Confirm multiple boarders. Section 9. Engaging." The maintenance bay was chaos when we got there. One of the boarding craft had torn through a section of the wall plating, leaving jagged edges glowing from the heat. 2 alien bodies were already down, but more were pressing through the breach, weapons spitting bursts of pale green energy. Security teams had cover behind equipment crates and bulkheads, returning fire in tight, controlled bursts. The smell of burned metal and something organic mixed in the air, clinging to the back of my throat. I dropped into cover beside a crewman, peeked, and put 2 rounds into the nearest alien's midsection. It folded forward, a wet, gurgling sound escaping its chest. The next one came straight at me. I let it close the distance, waited until I could see the strange, pulsing veins in its armor, and hit the shock emitter on my pistol. The burst of electricity lit it up from the inside, locking its limbs mid-stride before it collapsed, twitching. "Push them back!" I shouted. We surged forward as a unit, forcing them toward their breach point. The aliens fought like they weren't afraid to die. Fast, aggressive, no wasted motion. But the Valiance's corridors aren't forgiving to creatures that big. Every turn, every bulkhead became a choke point, and we used that. One alien tried to vault over a crate to get behind our line. I grabbed its arm mid-leap and yanked, using its own momentum to slam it head first into the deck. Something in its neck gave way with a sharp, wet snap. Another charged one of our gunners, claws outstretched. I shot it in the knee. The joint shattered, and it went down in a heap before I finished it with a shot to the throat. The fight in the bay lasted maybe 5 minutes, but it felt like an hour. By the time the last alien fell, the deck was littered with bodies, their strange armor leaking fluids that smoked against the hot metal. We sealed the breach with emergency bulkheads, welding them in place while the security chief ran a sweep for any stragglers. My arms ached, my ears rang from the close gunfire, and my pulse still hadn't slowed. On the way back to the bridge, I passed medics dragging wounded crew on stretchers. Some were still conscious, teeth clenched against the pain. Others not so much. One body was covered fully with a thermal sheet. I didn't recognize the boots sticking out from underneath, but I knew I'd seen them at mess more than once. When I stepped back into the bridge, Reeves glanced at me only briefly before turning back to his display. "Report." "Breach neutralized," I said. "Borders are down. Section 9's sealed." He nodded once. "Casualties?" I hesitated. "More than we wanted. Less than they came for." Something almost like approval flickered across his face. The tactical officer turned in his seat. "Sir, long-range sensors picking up multiple contacts. Same signature as the second ship, maybe 4, maybe 5. ETA, 20 minutes. The bridge went still again, that predator's stillness. We'd just barely cleaned our own halls, and now the wolves were circling in packs. Reeves leaned back in his chair, clasped his hands, and looked at the void beyond the viewport. "Good," he said softly. "Let them come. The first one learned what happens when they knock on our door." I tightened my grip on the pistol at my side. My knuckles were still stained with alien blood, and the smell of it clung to my uniform. If they wanted a war, the Valiance was ready to teach it. The void was never silent to me. People talk about space being this endless, soundless canvas, but when you've been in it long enough, you hear things. The hum of the engines vibrating through your boots, the faint groan of the hull adjusting to temperature shifts, the electric buzz of the shields when something big is coming. That last sound was already creeping through the Valiance's bones before the fleet even showed up on visuals. The hum was deeper, heavier, like the ship itself was bracing for impact. Tactical put the display on the main viewport. 4. No, 5 signatures, all with the same dark, light-swallowing hull as the second ship we'd fought. They came in a wide formation, each ship moving at an exact speed, not a single straggler. That alone told me something. They weren't a warband. They were military, disciplined, coordinated. "They're closing fast," the tactical officer said. "Estimated time to weapons range, 18 minutes. 18 minutes felt like nothing. You could barely brew a decent cup of coffee in that time. Reeves stood at the center of the bridge, hands clasped behind his back. "Status of our weapons?" "Spinal cannon operational, primary batteries online, missile bays at 70% capacity," came the reply. "Shield generators 1 and 2 stable, but number 3 is down to 82%. 82 wasn't terrible, but if the fight went long, that percentage would fall like a stone. The captain's eyes shifted to me. "Vance, damage control?" "Teams are sealing compromised sections. We've got full atmosphere in every habitable area again. We're still running on secondary coolant in the forward railgun banks. Keep it that way until they're in range. I don't want another heat spike locking out our guns in the middle of a volley." "Aye, sir." The comm crackled, an incoming hail from the fleet. It wasn't a voice this time. It was a video feed. The image was grainy at first, then cleared into the strange, eyeless faceplate of one of the aliens. The plate was covered in glowing symbols, shifting in patterns I couldn't read. The translation AI did its best. "Human vessel. You have destroyed 2 ships of the untranslatable fleet and murdered our warriors. You will power down weapons and prepare for capture. Resist, and you will be annihilated." Reeves didn't blink. "Tell them." He let the words hang, as if considering, "Negotiations are still over." We cut the transmission before they could answer. The fleet adjusted formation. 4 ships angled to encircle us, the 5th holding back in the center. Command ship, most likely. "Sir," I said, leaning toward him, "if they box us in, we won't have the room to maneuver." "I know," he said. "That's why we hit them before they finished the box." Orders went out fast. Helm adjusted our heading, Tactical recalibrated targeting priorities, and the missile crews began feeding warheads into launch tubes. The hum of the spinal cannon started again, deep and ominous, building in my chest like an oncoming storm. They fired first. A wall of energy slammed into our shields from 3 different directions at once. The bridge lights dimmed, the deck under my feet shuddered hard enough to rattle my teeth, and every console flashed red. Shields at 64%! Secondary armor heating! Starboard batteries taking a pounding! Reeves didn't waste breath asking for damage details. Return fire, all batteries. Target their lead interceptor. The Valiant spoke in fury. Railguns thundering, plasma lances slicing through the dark, missile salvos streaking toward the nearest ship. The first volley hit home, tearing through its forward plating and venting a stream of fire and debris into the void. But they didn't slow down. 2 ships broke off from the encirclement, rushing to close the distance for a kill shot. Their hulls shifted mid-flight, sections reconfiguring into weapon pods. "Incoming heavy ordnance," the tactical officer barked. The alien barrage lit up our shields, hammering the same section over and over until the readout flashed critical. "Shields on Sector 6 down," came the call. The deck pitched sideways as one of their plasma bursts chewed into our exposed armor. I caught myself on my console, teeth gritted. Reeves finally raised his voice. "Shift all fire to the right flank. Cut them down before they breach us again." The concentrated counterattack worked. 1 alien ship's midsection tore open under our guns, its internal core flaring bright before the whole thing went dark and began to drift. But now 3 were still on us, and the command ship hadn't even fired its main weapon yet. "They're forcing us into a standoff we can't win long-term," I said, low enough for only the captain to hear. He glanced sideways at me. "Then we don't fight them long-term." I didn't know what he meant until he opened a comm line to engineering. "Prepare overdrive sequence on the spinal cannon." The room went still. Overdrive was a last resort mode. It could fire a shot so powerful it would melt the cannon's own housing if you didn't vent half the ship's coolant into it. "Sir," I started, "you'll burn out the barrel. We'll lose our only real advantage." "We'll only need it once," he said. The overdrive prep countdown appeared on my console. 60 seconds. Every alien ship in range kept hammering us, the hull groaning with each impact. 40 seconds. Our shields were down to 30%. Armor breaches in multiple sectors. Damage control was reporting casualties, some sections losing atmosphere entirely. 20 seconds. 1 alien ship was closing fast on our port side, probably hoping to ram or attach a boarding clamp. 10 seconds. The command ship finally moved, angling its prow toward us. Its central weapon began to glow, a deep, burning crimson. 5 seconds. The bridge lights flickered. Power systems strained, the whole ship trembling like it knew what was coming. The overdrive fired. The recoil slammed through the Valiants, making the deck shiver and every loose item rattle against the bulkheads. The beam that erupted from our prow was brighter than anything I'd ever seen in combat, a column of pure annihilation that carved through the void and smashed into the command ship dead center. Its crimson glow died instantly. The hull didn't rupture. It vaporized, splitting down the middle in a shower of molten debris. The 2 halves drifted apart, venting atmosphere and fragments of crew into the black. For a moment, the battlefield went still. The remaining alien ships hesitated, their formation breaking just slightly. That hesitation was all we needed. "Hit them while they're thinking about it," Reeves barked. We poured everything we had left into them, every missile, every plasma shot, every slug from the railguns. Another ship went dark, its engines blown out. The last 2 turned tail, their retreat vectors already accelerating. The void went quiet again. The bridge crew exhaled as one. Some slumped in their seats, Others kept their eyes locked on the readouts, unwilling to believe it was over. Reeves sat back slowly, his eyes on the drifting wreckage of the command ship. "They'll be back," I said quietly. He didn't look at me when he answered. "Good. Let them bring more. We'll keep ending negotiations until they get the message." The first thing I noticed after the battle was the smell. Not blood, not fire, although both were there in spades, but that heavy chemical bite of scorched insulation and burnt coolant. It clung to the air scrubbers like a stain no filter could clean. The Valiance was alive, but barely. From the bridge, I could hear her complaining in low groans and occasional metallic pops as the superstructure settled after the stress of the overdrive shot. The damage reports were coming in, one after another, each worse than the last. "Engineering decks 2 and 4 offline. Primary coolant reserves depleted. Secondary systems holding at 40%. Casualties, 37 confirmed dead, 12 unaccounted for, 26 wounded." Those numbers didn't feel like numbers. They were faces I'd seen in the mess, voices I'd heard in the corridors. I didn't need to know all their names to feel the hole they left. Captain Reeves stayed at his post, watching as debris drifted across the viewport. It was a graveyard out there, chunks of alien hull spinning slowly, bodies frozen in awkward shapes, missile fragments tumbling end over end. One of our own gun batteries was floating out there too, sheared off and glowing faintly as it radiated heat into the void. "Helm," Reeves said at last. "Set a course for Rendezvous Point Epsilon. Minimal emissions profile. No comms unless we have to." The helmsman gave a stiff nod and began plotting the route. Epsilon was deep in the dead zone, far from any friendly traffic, chosen precisely because no one would stumble across us by accident. I checked my console again, then stood. "Sir, I'm going to walk the ship. See what we're holding together with duct tape this time." He gave me a look that was half permission, half unspoken order. Deck 6 was worse than I expected. The alien boarding attempt had left scorch marks and jagged holes in the bulkheads. Someone had welded makeshift patches over them, the seams still glowing faintly. A fire suppression drone skittered past me on the ceiling, spraying foam into a section of venting coolant. I found Sergeant Hale in the corridor outside the ruined maintenance bay, helmet clipped to his belt, his uniform streaked with alien blood. "How bad?" I asked. He let out a humorless laugh. "We've been worse, but not by much." He glanced back toward the bay. "Half the tools in there are fried. We're cannibalizing gear from the drone hangar just to keep the patch jobs from falling apart." I crouched to look at one of the patched holes. The weld was rough but solid. "Any boarders survive?" "Not unless they can breathe vacuum." He didn't smile when he said it. In the med bay, the air was thick with antiseptic, and the muted hum of monitors. Beds were crammed into every available space, some patients conscious, others pale and still under thermal blankets. The wounded were a mix of burns, shrapnel wounds, and broken bones from being thrown against bulkheads when the alien fleet hit us in unison. Dr. Anya Locke barely looked up from the patient she was suturing. "Unless you're bleeding, get out of my way," she snapped. "I'm not here for treatment," I said. "Just checking on the count." She nodded once toward a sealed side room. "Bodies are in there. Haven't had time to tag them all. Too busy with the ones still breathing." The weight in my gut grew heavier. You can be in the Navy long enough to get used to death, but you never stop feeling the shape it leaves behind. Engineering was a different kind of chaos. Sparks showered from overhead conduits as crews rerouted power. Someone was halfway inside a coolant manifold, shouting for a wrench. The whole deck smelled like oil and hot steel. Chief Engineer Barris was standing on a catwalk, barking orders at a half-dozen techs. He looked like he hadn't slept in days, face unshaven, eyes bloodshot. Tell me something good, I said. He didn't even look up from his data pad. Good. You're standing on the only ship in the sector that can still punch a hole clean through a capital-class alien warship. Bad? You've got about one more spinal shot left before that barrel turns into a fancy piece of molten scrap. What about the shields? We're regenerating, but slowly. Lose another generator and we're flying naked. I nodded. Do what you can. Epsilon's not exactly next door. By the time I made it back to the bridge, the ship felt quieter. Not safe. Never safe. But steady. We were limping, sure, but the Valiance was a brawler. She'd been in worse scraps and lived to tell the story. Reeves was still watching the wreckage on the viewport. I came up beside him. Epsilon's 2 days out if we keep our emissions low, I said, assuming no one follows us. They'll follow, he said without hesitation. But not yet. They'll regroup, decide how much we scared them, or how much they want revenge. I studied him for a second. You think they'll come back stronger? He didn't smile, didn't blink. I hope so. I didn't sleep much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the crimson glow of the alien command ship's weapon charging, felt the ship lurch under the impact of their first volley. I heard the sharp crack of my pistol putting a boarding alien down at arm's length. Around 300, I gave up on rest and walked to the observation deck. Out there, beyond the battered glass, the void was calm again. Stars hung like cold fire, and the drifting debris field was fading behind us as we crawled toward the dead zone. For the first time since the fight, I let myself breathe without expecting the next alarm. But even then, I knew the silence was temporary. The aliens had learned something about us in that battle. The same thing anyone learns when they meet the Valiants. We don't scare easy, and when you come for us, we don't negotiate. We slid into Epsilon on silent drive, running cold and dark. No running lights, no active scans, no comm bursts. Just a steady crawl through black space, the Valiant's breathing shallow, so nothing could hear her. Epsilon wasn't a station, not really. It was a derelict mining platform abandoned 20 years ago when the ore veins dried up. Half its solar panels were cracked and drifting, and the rest pointed in random directions like broken fingers. The only light came from a thin scatter of beacons on the outer hull, their pulses slow and irregular, a pattern pre-agreed between us and command to mark it as clear. From the bridge, I watched the shape of it grow in the viewport, the spindly docking arms reaching out like skeletal limbs. Helm, keep us 10 clicks off, Reeves ordered. No closer until I say. The helmsman nodded and adjusted our vector. I leaned on my console, scanning the surrounding space. The derelict's shadows were deep, too deep, the kind that swallows ships whole if you're not careful. You think anyone beat us here? I asked quietly. Reeves didn't answer right away. If they did, they're waiting for us to relax. At first glance, the place was dead. No power signatures except the beacons, no EM noise. But as the Valiants drifted into position, my readouts caught something. A faint return. Too faint for an active ship, unless it was running the same cold profile we were. Sir, I said, narrowing the scan. I'm getting a distortion off the port side of the platform. Could be debris, could be a ship with active camo. Reeves's jaw tightened. Mark it, but don't ping it. Let's see if it blinks first. We held position for another 3 minutes. That's when the beacon pattern changed. It was subtle, just one extra pulse in the sequence, but it wasn't ours. And if it wasn't ours, it was bait. Contact, Tactical said suddenly. Multiple signatures decloaking, 07 Mark 13. They came out of the black like sharks out of murk. 3 alien ships, smaller than the warships we'd fought before, but built for speed and teeth. Their hulls gleamed like oil under a light, and their forward batteries were already hot. Bring us about, Reeves barked. "Secondary batteries, open fire. Do not let them close." The Valiants shuddered as we turned, railguns and plasma lances lighting up the void. The first volley caught one alien ship mid-turn, ripping a hole clean through its flank. It spun away, venting atmosphere and debris, but the other two kept coming. They didn't try to match our range. They just burned hard straight for us, closing the gap faster than our guns could chew through them. "Incoming boarding craft signatures." The aliens had learned from the last time. These weren't small pods. These were armored rams with claws, designed to punch into our hull like harpoons. "Missile bays," Reeves snapped. "Full spread. Take those bastards out before they get within clamp range." The launch tubes thumped in rapid succession, a swarm of warheads streaking out. Most hit home, detonating against the boarding rams in blinding bursts. One went dark and drifted, its systems fried. But one, just one, slipped through. "Impact imminent!" The deck pitched hard as the ram slammed into our port quarter. The sound wasn't a boom. It was a deep, grinding shriek of metal on metal, the hull flexing under the assault. "Hull breach in Section 12! "Boarders incoming." I didn't wait for orders. I grabbed my sidearm, keyed my comm to security, and sprinted for the nearest lift. The corridors blurred past in a strobe of red emergency lights. When the doors opened on Section 12, it was already hell. The alien ram had torn straight through two bulkheads, its forward section wedged deep into the ship. Smoke and coolant vented from the impact site, and the air was thick with the metallic tang of blood. The first alien came through the breach like it had been fired from a cannon, tall, armored, weapon in each claw. It cut down a crewman before I even got my sights up. I fired twice. The rounds punched through its shoulder joint, spinning it sideways before it went down under a burst from a security rifle. "Hold the line!" I shouted, moving to cover behind a fractured support beam. The aliens weren't subtle. They pressed hard, firing bursts of green-white energy and swinging blades that shimmered like heat haze. Every hit on the deck sent vibrations up through my boots, reminding me we were still taking fire from outside. One of them closed on me fast. I ducked under its swing, jammed my pistol under its chin, and pulled the trigger. The shock emitter lit up, the alien convulsing before it collapsed at my feet. Behind me, a crewman screamed. I spun to see another alien pinning him to the wall, its claw tearing through his armor. I put 2 rounds into its back. It didn't let go until the third. We fought for what felt like hours, but in reality it was maybe 15 minutes. The boarding team was smaller than last time, maybe 8 total, but they fought like they'd been told none of them were coming back. When the last one went down, the deck was slick with a mix of their black fluid and our own blood. My ears were ringing from the gunfire, my arms heavy. "Breach sealed," the security chief called over the comm. "All boarders neutralized." I leaned against the wall, breathing hard, until Reeves' voice came over the shipwide. "Helm, break us off from the platform. Tactical, bring the spinal cannon online. Let's clear the field." Back on the bridge, the viewport was alive with weapons fire. One of the alien ships had moved to cover the boarding ram, hammering us with suppressive fire. The other was circling wide, trying to get on our blind side. "Target the circler," Reeves ordered. "Break its engines first." Our guns tracked, firing in coordinated bursts. A railgun slug caught it dead in the rear thrusters, the explosion sending it tumbling end over end until a follow-up missile split it apart. The last ship turned to flee, but Reeves didn't let it. "Spinal cannon fire!" The beam speared through the void, catching the alien mid-burn. The entire forward half of the ship evaporated in a flare of molten debris. Silence settled over the bridge, broken only by the hum of systems straining to stabilize. "Damage report," Reeves said. I checked my console. "Port quarters a mess. Section 12 needs full rebuild. We've got fresh breaches patched with temp seals. Casualties, light compared to last time, but we can't take another hit like that and stay combat-worthy. Reeves nodded once, eyes still on the viewport. Then we won't, next time we hit first. I knew then Epsilon wasn't the end of this run. It was just the midpoint. We'd walked into their ambush and survived, but now we knew they were hunting us with intent. The Valiance wasn't limping anymore. She was stalking. The Valiance had taken her hits. Her armor was scorched, her hull patched with more welds than clean plating, and her coolant system still ran hot. But she was awake again. Angry awake. Epsilon was never meant to be a retreat point. It was bait. The aliens wanted to pin us there until they could bring in something bigger than we could handle. Reeves had other plans. He wasn't going to let them choose the battlefield again. "Tactical," he said, voice calm but carrying through the bridge. "Plot me a jump straight into their staging coordinates." There was a pause. "Sir, that's inside their defended space. We'll be surrounded the moment we come out of slip." "That's the point," Reeves said. "We're not running anymore. We're sending a message." The plan was simple and suicidal. Hit them before they could regroup, cripple whatever was in orbit at their staging hub, and leave nothing but wreckage behind. The coordinates came from our combat AI's predictions, pieced together from their fleet movements during our earlier fights. If we were wrong, we'd be jumping into empty space. If we were right, we'd be jumping into a hornet's nest. I double-checked the weapon status on my console. Spinal cannon, one shot at full capacity before it needed hours of cooldown. Railguns, 5 of 8 batteries operational. Missiles, less than 50% of our stock. Shields, regenerated to 74%. Enough for a few solid hits, but not a siege. We weren't going to win with endurance. This was going to be a knife fight. Fast, brutal, decisive. The slip jump lasted 12 seconds. Long enough for my gut to knot and my brain to run through every mistake I'd ever made. Then the stars reformed around us, and we were there. Their hub was bigger than I expected. A sprawling ring station anchored around a green-blue planet, flanked by half a dozen warships. The ships were idling, facing outward, watching for trouble. None of them expected the trouble to appear right in their laps. "Lock Spinal on that station's core," Reeves ordered. "Missiles target the nearest warship. All secondaries fire at will." The Valiance roared to life, shaking off the quiet like a predator exploding from the shadows. The Spinal shot lanced out, a beam of white fury that speared through the station's center ring. The hub erupted in silence, massive chunks of debris spinning outward, the planet below lighting up with atmospheric burns from falling wreckage. The alien fleet reacted instantly. 4 ships burned toward us, 2 hanging back to protect what was left of the station. "Railguns on the lead ship," I said into the comm. "Tear its engines off." Our guns thundered. Slugs tore into the lead warship's aft section, breaching armor, shattering drives. It listed sideways, spinning helplessly as fire gutted its midsection. The others pressed harder, their opening volleys hammering our shields. "Shields at 59%, the defensive officer called. "Hold the line," Reeves said. "We break their teeth, they'll scatter." One alien ship tried to flank us, swinging around to target our weaker port quarter. I shifted our batteries, opening it up with concentrated fire until one of its weapon pods exploded, taking half its bow with it. The missile crews were working in perfect sync, feeding warheads into launch tubes as fast as they could. Each one that left the Valiance found its mark, turning enemy hulls into drifting carcasses. We were in the thick of it now. No long-range posturing, no slow maneuvers, just close-quarters brutality. Their beams burned white scars across our hull. Our railgun slugs punched deep into their armor. Every impact was a gut punch, every return volley a counter to keep us in the fight. "Multiple inbound fighters," Tactical's voice cut through the chaos. "They're trying to overwhelm our point defense. I switched to the PD control interface, lining up the closest fighters. The ship's autocannons spun up, shredding the first wave before they could get close. A few slipped through, their micro-missiles slamming into our aft section. The shockwave rattled my teeth. "Engineering, report!" "Damage to starboard cooling grid, but we're holding," Barris barked back. The turning point came fast. One of their capital ships, a black-hulled beast bigger than the Valiant's, swung broadside and unleashed a full barrage at our shields. The impact tore through our remaining protection, sending sparks showering across the bridge. "Shields down!" We didn't wait to recover. Reeves ordered a direct burn toward it, railguns and plasma lances firing point blank. The hull cracked under our fire, and the spinal cannon, running on a half charge, punched a molten tunnel straight through its midsection. The alien ship folded in on itself, venting atmosphere and debris like a dying animal. The others hesitated. That was all we needed. In 12 minutes, the fight was over. 4 enemy ships were burning wrecks. The station was shattered. The planet's orbit was a graveyard of their technology. We didn't linger. The Valiance turned away from the destruction, her engines burning steady as we cleared the system. On the bridge, no one spoke for a full minute. The only sounds were the hum of the drives and the faint ping of cooling metal. Finally, Reeves broke the silence. "Log the engagement. Outcome: decisive human victory. Enemy fleet destroyed, hub neutralized." He looked out at the fading wreckage, his voice low but hard. Message delivered. I sat back in my chair, my pulse finally slowing. We weren't unscathed, far from it, but we'd done what no one else had dared. We'd gone into their space, struck at their heart, and walked away under our own power. They'd come again. Of course they would. But now they knew exactly what they were facing when they came. The Valiance, the dreadnought that ends negotiations. The first days after the strike were quiet in the way only deep space can be. No hails, no pursuit. Just the cold hum of the drives carrying us toward friendly territory, and the sound of the Valiance settling into a wounded kind of calm. The crew moved slower, but it wasn't fatigue. It was that strange, post-battle awareness that you're still alive when you probably shouldn't be. The kind that makes every step echo just a little louder in your own head. From my console on the bridge, I watched the stars slide by in the black. It felt like we were leaving something behind. But I knew better. The war wasn't behind us. It was out there, coiling, deciding when to show its teeth again. I walked the ship twice a day in those first 48 hours. Not because I needed to, but because I had to see her. The burns in the plating, the welds where the alien claws had torn through, the places where our own systems had overheated from pushing too far. She wasn't just a machine. She was the only thing standing between us and becoming part of that wreckage field over the alien world. In Section 9, the welds were still warm to the touch. Crew worked in pairs, one holding the torch, the other keeping an eye on the readings in case the heat stressed the bulkhead. No one spoke much. The quiet wasn't fear. It was respect. For the ship, for the dead, for the fact that every second we'd been in that fight, we'd been one wrong move from ending up scattered atoms in the void. Medbay was worse. The wounded from Epsilon's ambush were still there, some stable, others in the long, hard fight to stay alive. Dr. Locke didn't look up when I walked in, but I could see the exhaustion in her face. "You here to add to my list, Vance?" she asked, voice like gravel. "Not today," I said. "Just checking in." "Then you can check that I'm short on staff, short on meds, and long on people who shouldn't still be breathing." She finally looked at me. "You keep bringing them back from fights like that, and I'm going to start charging hazard pay." Her words were sharp, but there was no heat in them. Locke knew as well as I did that we didn't get to choose the fights. The fights came to us. By the third day, the adrenaline was gone, replaced by something heavier. Not regret, that wasn't in the Valiance's DNA. But the reality of what we'd done settled in. We'd torn their fleet apart, we'd shattered their station, we'd turned their planet's sky into a rain of their own wreckage. The message was clear. But clear messages have consequences. I caught Reeves alone in the observation deck that night, his hands clasped behind him, eyes on the endless dark. "They'll come back harder," I said. It wasn't a question. "They will," he agreed, "and they'll think it's revenge. But it won't be. It'll be fear dressed up as rage. They've met us now. They know we don't beg." "Do you think they'll ever try to talk again?" Reeves didn't look away from the stars. "If they do, it'll be because they've run out of ships." The ship's logs were sealed after the Epsilon engagement. Command would see them, pick apart every decision, every shot fired. They'd send their commendations, maybe even a medal or two. They'd ignore the faces of the 37 dead, the names carved into the Valiance's wall of the fallen. That wall was in the mess hall. Not tucked away in a ceremony room no one visited, but right where the crew ate, laughed, and pretended life wasn't lived on the knife edge. Every name was burned into the alloy, the letters dark against the steel. I added the latest myself, one at a time, the smell of scorched metal filling the air. When I was done, I stood there longer than I should have. We'd won. But winning never felt like this when you were a kid imagining war. We reached friendly space on the 5th day. The fleet sent an escort, 2 destroyers, and a frigate to meet us. Their hulls were clean, their guns untouched. They fell into formation without a word, like parade guards for a battered champion limping home. The comms lit up with orders, docking schedules, repair bay assignments. Everything was efficient, clinical, as if the Valiance hadn't just carved her name into another species' history. But I saw the way the crews on the other ships looked at us through their viewports when we passed. Some looked with respect, others with something like unease. The Valiance wasn't just a ship to them anymore. She was a warning. On our final approach to dock, Reeves stood, straightened his uniform, and looked over the bridge crew. "You did your jobs," he said simply. "You kept this ship alive, and you made sure anyone who comes for us knows exactly what they'll get. That's all that matters." He didn't offer comfort. He didn't tell us we'd done well. He didn't need to. On the Valiance, survival was its own commendation. When we locked into the repair cradle, the ship groaned one last time, like a fighter sitting down after the last round. The dock crews swarmed her, patching, welding, replacing entire panels of armor. She'd be pretty again someday, but I knew she'd never be clean. Not where it mattered. I stayed aboard during the first shore leave. The dock was too quiet, too civilized. I didn't want clean streets and polite smiles. I wanted to stay with the ship, walk her corridors, hear the faint hum of her systems like the heartbeat of something that had saved me more times than I could count. On the 10th day, Command sent a transmission. The alien forces had gone silent in the sector. No scouts, no raids, no comms. Whether it was regrouping or reconsidering, no one knew. Reeves played the message for me in his ready room, then shut it off. "They're watching," he said, "waiting for us to leave the cage. Are we going to?" He gave me the kind of smile that meant trouble. "Soon. And when we do, they'll remember exactly why they call us what they do." I left him there and walked back to the observation deck. Out beyond the dock's shielding, the stars were the same as they'd been before all this, cold, distant, indifferent. The war wasn't over. It probably never would be. But for now, the void was quiet, and the Valiance was still here. And if they came again, No, when they came again, we'd be ready. Because the first contact had ended the way it began, with the monster ship in the dark, staring down the galaxy and daring it to speak.